Hi, everyone, and welcome to Navigating the Chaos of Manufacturing. I'm Heather Preu, CEO of Intellect, and I'll be your host today. Over the past year, I've worked closely with enterprise manufacturers across highly regulated industries, helping them modernize their quality and frontline operations while navigating increasing complexity. I'm excited to bring together both a technology provider and an analyst perspective for today's conversation. I'm joined by two analysts from LNS Research today, Allison Kuhn and James Wells. Allison and James, thank you for being here with us today. I'll let each of you briefly introduce yourself in just a moment. Today's discussion brings together 2 points of view. From our Intellect side, I'll share lessons learned from working directly with enterprise manufacturing customers over the past few years, what challenges they faced in 2025, and what we see trends being going forward, what success looks like for them, and how we've evolved to be truly customer first in supporting their digital transformation. From LNS's perspective, Allison and James will share what they're seeing across the broader manufacturing landscape, key industry trends, emerging priorities, and what organizations should be preparing for as we move into 2026. Together, we'll connect real customer experiences with analyst insight to help you better navigate disruption, reduce operational risk, and position your organization for success in the year ahead. Allison, let's start with you. Could you introduce yourself today?
Sure, Heather. Thanks for having me. I'm Allison Kuhn. I work with LNS Research, as you said, as a research focused in the future of industrial work, which covers our broader connected frontline workforce applications of the technology space. I've connected it really closely to our embedded EHS and sustainability and our newest research coverage area in knowledge management. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Allison. James, could you please introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Heather. Good to see you again. Hi, everyone. I'm James Wells. I'm a senior analyst and research director here at LNS Research. My practices are quality, operational excellence, and organizational change management. I come to LNS with 25 years of industrial quality and OpEx leadership experience that informs my practice area. So excited to be here today. I would like to give a brief introduction of LNS to your audience who may not know who we are. So LNS Research is a advisory firm to some of the world's largest manufacturers around their transformation journey. So we're a mission and vision driven organization, and we are on a mission to inform industry leaders about how to navigate their transformations and come out the other side more effective and higher performing. So thank you for having us today.
Thank you so much. So to kick this session off, let's be honest, the last couple of years have been really interesting and challenging for manufacturers, dealing with things like competition, increasing regulatory oversight, thinning margins, tariffs, workforce challenges like aging expertise and speed to train and onboard new employees. We have a lot we could talk about today. But I think an interesting place to start might be around AI. Depending on who you speak with in an organization, some people think it's a magic bullet. Others think that, it's going to replace everyone in the workforce. And those thoughts can be in the same organization depending on who you're speaking with. What are you guys hearing and seeing, and how are companies navigating bringing AI into their companies?
So thanks for that question, Heather. I'd like to tee it up in terms of the degrading base case and industry challenges that we see, right? So you mentioned we've had a very difficult and trying time since COVID. In manufacturing, we've seen declining safety, quality, and productivity across manufacturing, with 2025 being the worst year on record for product recalls in the market. And then economic changes have introduced cost pressures, and that really leads to the appetite for AI solutions in manufacturing. And it's interesting because there was a recent Wall Street Journal article that showed that the higher you survey within an organization, the more optimistic and positive the outlook is for AI. And so it's in the C-suite, there is a lot of hope around the promise of AI technology in the workflow. But as you move down in organizations, trust becomes a much bigger issue, and that chain of reasoning, transparency that tells me that I'm acting on the right insight is terribly, terribly important, especially down at the front line.
Allison, anything from your perspective you'd like to share?
Oh, Heather. I mean, really, all of the things you said can be true, right? There's great optimism, and AI has great opportunities. One thing we all share in common is we've spent many years in manufacturing. So, over 20 years myself in manufacturing, I, as well as you, I'm sure, we all carry scars with those incidents that we were a part of, right? Where people did not go home as they came in. And it really is our job as leadership to send people home better than which they came. So we've had so many great improvements in AI and specifically in the EHS areas, right? We've had technologies like this around for years. Now it's really time to start looking at how can we really look at what we've been doing over the years, and really it's time to break down those traditional constraints that are holding us back. And it is the way that we've historically looked at technology as the leading edge of being able to really transform and change things, and really look, it's people that truly changes things. And if you're not there to truly be the leader that is trusted and transparent, then your transformation won't equivalent to anything much but a lot of spent time and money.
Absolutely. And I think talking about that, some of it is fear-based, right? As you go down, I think employees are worried, is this going to replace me? And I think, first thing we all know is in manufacturing, that is not the case. I think, delivering that message around these AI tools, making them better informed, getting more timely information, more accurate information. We know these guys are working on thin margins and, improving scrap and downtime, et cetera. Any tools that can help with that are really important in the market.
Oh, yeah. We talk about, I love what you just said, Heather. We talk about costless compliance here at LNS Research, and AI is a key element of realizing that dream of compliance embedded within the work and becoming just automatic as part of the process, right? And so it's a key capability, and it's interesting because you talked about fear, and we did some research last summer on the state of industrial transformation technology, which showed a dramatic difference between leaders and followers in terms of feeling empowered and trusting the AI and advanced technologies to empower them to do better work and elevate their skill set, as opposed to that traditional fear of I'm going to be replaced by AI, which is not really reasonable within our lifetimes, I think.
Yeah, James, that's a great point, right? When we talk about empowering people rather than, really directing them, I think that is a true differentiator in what we see with leaders versus followers. It's really trusting the people to, again, if you can get them the right information at the right time in the right place, they are in it to win it. And it's a win-win situation, not just for the business, but for people as well. And when we look at the adoption across technologies, we see that manufacturing as a whole is really leaning in. Over 50% of manufacturers have invested in not just industrial AI, but also the EQMS platforms and the connected frontline workforce applications. Because here we are every day, we have all of our tools at our fingertips for the house, right? I can order groceries, I can get it to plan a trip, I can get it to help me schedule my reminders to give the kids sign their forms, etc. And here I go into modern manufacturing and wait, it's not, I'm on paper. So Heather, I'm not sure what you're saying, but we've got a lot to gain back, and I'm sorry, making manufacturing sexy again.
Absolutely. No, that's a great point, Allison. What we have done, and let's dive into the workforce a bit more there based on what you're saying. We made a big move and investment at the end of 2025, making an acquisition for a powerful CFW Connect Frontline Worker solution to close that circle with our already well-established AI-powered QMS solution. We were getting feedback from many of our customers, things like, well, it's great that all our documents are now controlled and we've implemented training protocols, but how did they assure Bob on third shift got real-time access to what was happening? And how does Bob share what is actually happening on the floor? So their reality is quality doesn't break in the QMS solution or in the back in the lab. It breaks on the bench or at the line. And QMS defines quality. Connected Frontline Worker enforces it at the point of work. Mm-hmm. So we went down that path to better empower existing workers, from the feedback we were hearing from you guys, from what we were hearing from our customers. Mm-hmm. On top of that, the speed of skilling new employees and helping them maintain compliance, have a better work experience, was definitely behind our decision. So what are you seeing? And I think this ties into, they were calling it the great goodbye, right? What we're seeing with the employee workforce, aging out, especially post-COVID. And I know you guys have done a lot of research on that. So Allison, I'll throw this one your way first, and then we'll follow up with James.
Yeah, the great goodbye is something that I termed actually not long after I came to LNS, and it is exactly what we saw coming. And, unfortunately, we're seeing those extremely negative indicators that are all over, right? We're seeing step change increases in fatalities across manufacturing. And quite frankly, this is just unacceptable. When we look at the software solutions, the data, the information, and the expertise we have, right? We really have to focus on how do we really create a much more intelligent supply network, right? And in our intelligent supply network software approach, we show that connected frontline workforce is truly critical at helping the enterprise get the information and insights that they need in a way that they can understand it. So it's not just the costless compliance, it is truly empowering the people to do what we know is best to do in each situation. And, when we have that ability to not just create a corporate structure, right, where I spent years, right, big brother, big sister, putting a boot on my neck, right, this is what you will do. And by the way, I'm taking your money from your account budget to do it. This is really a way that we're eliminating with the CFW applications and that virtual operations center approach. We're creating a way to knock down the barriers between plant to plant even. So Bob on C shift is being able to help Sue on A shift and Sally on B shift. Right. I think that's the new world.
James, what about you? I know I believe even a year or two ago when we spoke, post-COVID, like pre-COVID, average tenure out in manufacturing was like 17 plus years or something. And It's gone down to, I think, 3 or 4. And over the last couple of years, really seeing that. So I think companies are looking to empower people, as we said, with better tools and make their day-to-day experience better. But secondly, when they do have to replace those people, getting somebody up to speed, in a timely manner is very challenging. So I think we're seeing that, and that's where we're putting a lot of our, investments in tools. Is that pretty much what you're seeing across the board?
Well, yeah, I mean, you and Allison have touched on some really important points. I just like to make the point that traditional quality approaches are really predicated on a highly experienced workforce, right? And so as we've had the 90% plus reduction in time in role and tenure over the last 6 years, a lot of that explicit knowledge and tacit knowledge has walked out the door. And that plays a role in the declining safety, quality, and productivity that we see. And poor decision making certainly affects quality. But it's interesting because manufacturing today is running faster than it ever has. And so an interesting statistic that I just learned about the other day is recalls have been on an escalating trend since 2019, but number of units on recall has exploded. And
Wow.
so what that means is that we're running faster, but our decision speed is still in the analog days, and we're making decisions at the same pace that we were prior to the Industry 4.0 era. And the other thing that brings together the EQMS and the CFW solution is to complete that last mile of decision implementation, right? So
Yes.
decisions and actions are often live in the EQMS system, but it's very difficult for those decisions and actions to get communicated down to the floor and then the results communicated back up to the system to create that closed loop. And I'm wondering what you've seen. I know you've just recently completed the acquisition with Zaptic, but
Yeah.
it's been a little while. Are you seeing that uptake and that realization in your customers?
Absolutely. They talk about close the loop, full circle, single pane of glass, all
Hmm.
those things and the timeliness. And with some of these, customers, our enterprise customers, as we're working with them. So, they medical device, highly regulated, automotive, all those different industries. We're also finding that as they're backfilling or replacing and bringing in new employees, they learn different nowadays too.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
keeping in mind that, okay, great,
Mhm.
we've got our documents locked down, our work instructions, whatever we're happen to be focused on, and somebody's printing it and putting it out in a book, still isn't going to resonate with the current generation
Right.
either. So not
Mhm.
only do you have to worry, did somebody put the latest thing in the book that they're working on the right thing? That isn't the way this next generation of worker
Mhm.
operates either. So I think we're seeing a lot of interest in make it easy to consume, make it, real time basically. And
Right.
that's how people are used to working now on tablets, on their phones, as you were saying earlier, Allison. So
Yeah.
100% that's what we're seeing. And again, the overall experience for the employee having these systems, they don't want to make mistakes. They want to know they're using the latest instructions. And
Right.
then at the top level, are we doing everything we can, like we talked about earlier, to empower our employees? So
Mhm.
that really drove us down the path of saying, how do we make it easier, faster, more reliable, but also how people want to consume or give that data. So,
Yeah.
absolutely. I
Yeah.
think you guys are seeing similar things. James, it looked like you had another thought you wanted to add there.
Yeah,
I was going to ask.
when Allison and I joined LNS about 4 years ago, that generation, we called it the YouTube generation, and they were interested in the micro learning that would occur from watching a YouTube video. I think we've moved beyond that
Mhm.
to uh, to more, smaller chunks of insight that are available at the moment of need, as opposed to even going to watch a YouTube video
Yeah,
is less dominant now as a learning modality than it was even 4 years ago.
makes sense.
Yeah. I think, and that's why we see so many leaders, right, having moved to a more dynamic employee experience, right, a life cycle based approach. Because it's not just at the point of need at the work, it's understanding the point of need for each employee. And that is really the magic and the power of why we have to move past these co-pilots and these simple approaches and move more to an agentic AI approach, right? Where when it's layered in working with the connected frontline workforce, it again is really focused on empowering people, empowering the best work and the best decisions, and that continuous improvement towards innovation. Because that's really where we see the difference being made is innovative products the customer is willing to pay for is part
Yours.
of that future of industrial work ecosystem that we see, right? Where that AI powered CFW is the center linchpin of the
Yeah.
entire workforce dynamic.
No, absolutely. And that's what's exciting to us as we're embracing this stuff. Again, intent never being replace people, right? It's replace
Right.
old systems, which a lot of places are still paper or books
Mhm.
or, whatever the case may
Right.
be. But also empower the employee to make the right decisions at the right time and consume it in a way that makes sense. Just bringing that back, it's really critical. So I know AI, big buzz, we could probably spend an hour just talking about that, but we can't not talk about costs, right? Costs of all
Right.
kinds are a big topic. And when we speak, manufacturers this last year, we can't not mention tariffs and what
Yes.
you're hearing from your COO councils and customers out there, how it's been impacting how they do business. Obviously, they have to find savings somewhere to cover the cost of those
Right.
tariffs. So I'd love to, kind of go down that road with you. So James, I'll let you start this one
Sure.
off and what you've been seeing and hearing.
So I think the conventional wisdom around tariffs was that it would drive a reshoring or rebuilding of manufacturing capability in the
Right.
United States. I think that was the intent. But a recent Institute of Supply Chain Management forecast from December of 2025 showed that reshoring is actually the third strategy, if you will, and the majority of companies that were surveyed in this forecast intend to absorb costs from
Mm.
tariffs or some combination of absorbing the costs and passing through some of the costs. And reshoring was the last choice and the last option. As we all know from our several years in industry in different places, uh, building a new factory is not a quick thing, right? And finding the people to work in that factory is even more challenging now than it was 5 or maybe even 10 years ago. So we don't have a deep bench of manufacturing talent to pull from in certain geographies and certain demographics. And so as a result, manufacturers are feeling significant cost pressure because they're intending to absorb those elevated supply chain costs and those sorts of things. And so they're looking for strategies and ways to be more efficient with the existing resources. We see in many of our research cycles that in a down economic cycle is actually the time to make investments. And so cost cutting is not a strategy. And if you make investments in a down business cycle, you can accelerate past your competition who might have that cost cutting strategy as a mindset.
Mhm.
And so it's a significant challenge right now. Uh, I'm wondering what you see or what Allison might see in terms of that as well.
Well, I'll jump in and then turn it over to Allison. So, yes, we were seeing a lot of people delaying decisions. They still needed the
Mhm.
system, but you're right. They were trying to figure out where are we funding this from. We've got to find internal savings. And what we found is, in general, you're right. The companies that are adopting those things are kind of leapfrogging their competition. On the flip side, and I say this lightheartedly, it's kind of like getting married or having children. There's never a right time to implement systems and do these things, but the
Right.
longer you wait, a lot of times the harder it'll get. And so trying to explain to people, as you mentioned, is when it's a little bit of a down cycle, when things are a little bit slower, take advantage, put these things in place, because we like to talk a lot of times in our process. You talk about ROI and things like that, but self-funding, a lot of times what I mean by that is we're going to make them more efficient, get timely information, make better decisions, which can impact your bottom line through less scrap, better performance, better uptime. So doing something like this actually is going to fund itself with the savings that you're going to
Right.
see from becoming a leaner, meaner,
Right.
more responsive organization. So yeah, I think that is one of the things working with companies to say, I know, you're maybe feeling a little bit of a slowdown right now, but take advantage and get ready, because it's gonna make you, more effective and more competitive in the market. Allison, what about you? What have you been hearing, seeing in this regard?
Yeah, I mean, so if we just look at, the recent month, right, we've seen more and more factory losses, right, across the landscape. But the great news is we've also seen a great uptick in orders received in the last month, right? The highest that we've seen in the last 3 years.
Wow.
And again, the work is coming, the influx is coming. The question is, are you still thinking in the old way of thought, right? Are you still looking at how am I going to save money? Am I going to cut people, right? Because that was always the way behind the project. Why are we not looking at value created, right?
Right.
How are these new systems? How are we going to consolidate these silos of data and experience? Not look at rip and replace, right? Look at empowering and adding on to what we already have with these newer systems, right? So, again, we like to say this newer generation and how they like to learn, but frankly, we have all shifted the way we approach learning, right? We are all very much so not interested in keeping lots of books and materials for the most part, right? We toss it. We say, I'll get it when I need it. So we can't look at a compliance driven, hey, I've trained you. So how do you mean you weren't able to do it a year later and you haven't touched it? I mean, come on. We've got to move past check the block, cost savings and look towards value creation. And
Yep.
how are we upskilling our people for the changes that are here, much less coming?
Right. Right.
Yeah, and I'd like to add on to that if you don't mind,
Absolutely, James. I was going to
Heather.
say jump in because I saw you get
Yeah.
excited there.
So you said some things earlier about ROI and impact in terms of scrap and throughput and that sort of stuff. And Allison talked about some similar ideas around business impact. One of the things that we saw in my quality research from 2024 is that traditionally quality leaders have trouble gaining C-suite approval for their business cases, which is the slowdown in deals that you mentioned in your earlier comment. But there's an additional challenge in that traditionally quality business cases are predicated on efficiency of the quality function improvement, right? So I'm going to do twice as many kappas in half as much time, sorts of things. But if you're not shifting headcount, then you're not changing the ROI, right? So if I'm still the same person and I can do twice as many kappas as I could yesterday, the company's still paying me the same amount of money, and so there's no actual savings. And so the C-suite has really gotten very skeptical about those quality within quality efficiency based business cases. In fact, about 50%, a little over 50% of those style of business cases failed to gain C-suite approval in my research in 2024. So not only do we go through a very difficult economic period, but there's this skepticism that quality business cases don't deliver business impact. And when you can speak to business impact and delivered quality results and throughput improvement and all of those operational business impact results, it gets attention.
Absolutely. Well, I think, great point when you were talking about the issues you've seen, the recall increases,
Yeah.
the issues that are getting out to the market. We kind of have taken the approach, man, if you prevent one incident, you've paid for a system like this. On top of it, we as an organization understood QMS is a really strong part and companies know they need it. And for those type of situations, but then you add the connected frontline worker level to that. And now, it's going to the floor. They've got the right
Mhm.
stuff. They're able to push back what's happening and make those really timely adjustments. It's a really powerful case. And you're right. People slowed down a little bit with tariffs and the cost cutting that went on, this past year. It didn't stop them coming forward. It just slowed them down saying justify the budget, right? So they
Right.
know they need these tools.
Mhm.
And I think, there is that question of, is it still fear and, these systems and AI and all of this and an education process? Or is it, you're right, understanding the true costs that go along with this? And if I spend
Yeah.
this now, I'm going to reap the benefits for years to come. So it pays for itself tenfold. So I think that's been an interesting journey to go on. And it's really helpful to hear your perspective because again, coming back to just the down and dirty of it, you have an incident, you have to do a recall. It's going to cost you a lot more than putting a system like this in place.
Right, right.
Yeah.
I mean, you could just look at an example from the aerospace industry to see that the reputational harm of that
Yes.
to that manufacturer far exceeded the cost savings that they achieved in their streamlined approach. And so the reputation is worth exponentially more in the market than the cost of a system.
Absolutely.
We can look at that and say, right, if you look at EHS and quality, right,
Yep.
you can say that there's a certain limit maybe to that value, right, that you might be able to prove or gain right behind that business case. But you cannot quantify the risk of one big event. And it's not just aerospace, right? We can think about food, baby products. There's a
Automotive.
certain recall that's come back yet again, right? I mean, we're talking millions because we aren't just hurting people within the walls of our plants. If you look at this consumer safety incidents, they are also staggering. And with back orders higher than ever, new orders coming in, this is going to mean more stress on the people that are already stressed across your plant network. So that new operating model, the way we have to look at things, has to come today, and it has to start now from the top, but be empowered from the bottom.
Absolutely. That's a great point. Start at the top and empowered from the bottom. I'm stealing that, Allison. I really like that. So again, I know we could go on all day, but obviously we've got to respect time. So putting on your easy button, looking into a magic ball, 2026. If you had one piece of advice or one area that manufacturers should focus on, or a trend that you just want to drive home, let's kind of give you kind of your closing, what to be thinking in 2026. So James, I'm going to start with you on this one.
I guess my theme for 2026 is around, I've mentioned it before, but it's around trust, right? Mm-hmm. So we have this three-legged stool of EQMS, CFW, and AI, and all those tools that deliver powerful insight to the front line. But without trust, then that frontline worker doubts whether they should take the action, right? And so if you deliver a powerful insight that isn't acted on, then you don't really impact the business performance. And so and we're seeing this theme in our AI research and IX tech research that I did last year, the elevation of trust as an operational requirement. To scale these systems across the organization. That is the driver for 2026 for me.
Awesome. Thank you. Allison, final parting words.
Simplify. We cannot keep doing more with less, right? It's just we've created all these different silos, and trust is huge. And we should all be looking to what have we created over the years that are truly just lots of hurdles and mountains. We have got to take a servant leadership approach where you don't have to be in a leadership role. And it needs to be not just the front line, but your engineers, your supply chain, everybody in R&D, and right. Everybody needs to be looking at how do we simplify? How do we use AI to automate those dull, dangerous tasks? Those things that we don't need to do, or again, is not value added. We need to be looking at where do we really create our value as a company, and how do we empower more and more people, more time to create value that way, instead of, again, looking at rear view mirror and KPIs as to where we were. You need to be looking at, are we simplifying, and are we driving the outcomes and behaviors that we need to drive? Those are the KPIs you need, not OEE.
No, Allison, that's great feedback. And, I could definitely say, as we talk to companies out there, if you're not talking to us, your competition probably is, right? Everybody's looking to be smarter, faster, stronger. I call it the bionic theory, but, how do we empower our people, make better decisions faster, more timely? And, you talked about the looking in the rear view mirror. if you're looking back at data that was a shift last week and trying to figure out what you've lost all that time where you probably have made more bad parts, had more downtime, that could have been addressed. So simplify process, integrated systems, more timely, empower your people. I think those are great messages in 2026. I'm excited. Hopefully this will become an annual thing with you guys, and we can look back and say, okay, what happened in 2026? As we go into 2027. But Allison, James, I want to thank you so much for your time today. It was an absolute pleasure speaking with you, and I look forward to having another sit down again soon.
Great. Good to see you again, Heather. Thanks for the invite.